Moving to our top story today, Democratic South Africa's had such lofty dreams of Ramaphosa bullet trains for our now largely decrepit rail network, if we're being honest. The Gautrain, though, while it stands as somewhat of a contemporary rail success story, if you will, still, the high-speed service between OR Tambo International Airport and the capital, Pretoria, is approaching its final station in finding a new operator to run the Gautrain. News 24 business journal, William Brederode, well, he's here to check our tickets. Thanks for joining us back on the lead.
Thanks, Graeme. I love it here.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, the Gautrain's lekker.
It's my favorite treat when I go to Gauteng. I make sure to go on the Gautrain. I mean, it's clean, modern, generally on time. I was actually looking yesterday for statistics to show it. I couldn't really find them, but I suppose anecdotally, it's very well run.
Yes, it's a great service. It's a success story, like I've alluded to, and it's a dream to take that from the airport. Perhaps still a luxury for most South Africans in terms of the ticket prices, right?
Well, I'd say it's a success story, definitely in terms of the experience. I think there's maybe some questions that can be asked about the finances of it.
Yeah, and the affordability.
And where it runs. I mean, it doesn't run to Soweto.
Yes.
So it's largely serving richer areas.
Yes. And it's for business people on the move,
That's seemingly the target. Although on ticket prices, it is worth mentioning that they are running some discounts for students and pensioners, and they launched a new program with that.
Okay, cool.
Where people can apply to get a special status and then.
But when you go down into the subways, you can sort of like suspend your disbelief for 2 moments and think that you possibly in Europe or America.
That's how it feels. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so you came across somewhat of a scoop that the Gautrain Management Agency, well, this is the state agency that obviously oversees the safe running of this entire operation. It initially awarded Bombela Concessions Company, I remember that being in the headlines for quite a while, the tender to construct and run the Gautrain essentially for 2 decades, 20 years. When did the process first start now to possibly find a replacement or to keep Bombela on as the main sort of operator here? When did that process begin?
About 2 years ago. So from what I can see, that process kicked off in November 2023. And that was towards the start of the month. Towards the end of the month, the Gautrain Management Agency hosts a briefing and set out their timeline to complete this process. Because come March 2026, the 20-year concession would have elapsed, and failing an extension, technically there'd be no operator of the Gautrain. So they gave themselves what that would be November 2023, counting forward 2 years or so, 2 and a bit years. And they wanted to have selected a preferred bidder to be the next operator by August 2024, more than a year ago.
Obviously, that hasn't happened.
And that hasn't happened yet. So the Gautrain Management Agency indicated to me that there's been several extensions in that process to allow bidders more time to get their pitches together and to finalize everything. But they said that's not the final stage of the hurdle, or final hurdle to select a preferred bidder. Thing is, it's more than a year after they initially indicated they wanted to have finished that process, and they budgeted time for the bidder to reach commercial close and financial close, and then to have a transition period, which should have started by now. But they haven't selected a preferred bidder, which should have happened more than a year ago based on their own timeline.
And when's the deadline now for the new operator to supposedly start in practice?
Well, March 2026 is when it's actually 19 and a half years, when that 19 and a half year concession period ends. So in their annual report for the latest year, 24-25, the Gautrain Management Agency puts I think they call it business continuity as one of the top 5 strategic risks facing the Gautrain post-March 2026. Practically, they'll almost certainly make a plan. Whether they somehow manage to appoint a preferred bidder before March or offer an extension to the current operator, there's more than likely going to be some sort of an arrangement made.
But did they give you any sort of indication as to whether or not they would allow Bombela that grace period if they haven't found a new preferred bidder for them to possibly continue to run the Gautrain in this interim period, as sometimes these things do end up being?
I asked the question and it was not directly answered whether an extension would be considered.
That's helpful.
That's helpful. The way they phrased it was that they are, and I'm not going to get the exact wording right, but the sentiment was that they're confident that there will be a successful transition period after March 2026, and that there will not be any disruptions to the service. So they didn't really elaborate on how they're going to achieve that, given that they are behind their previously communicated timelines, but they said that that's what they're going to do.
But there's no other smoke here to indicate that the process is not running on track in terms of procedurals here. There's no other, where there's smoke, there's fire at this point, right?
It's a matter of, they said they would have selected a preferred bidder to run the Gautrain by August 2024. We're now more than a year later, and they haven't selected a preferred bidder.
And they're not giving the reasons.
They've indicated that they've extended the bid validity window several times to accommodate bidders and the Gautrain Management Agency to sort out whatever procedural matters they're sorting out. But by way of specifics that would be of particular interest, let me say, I don't have them.
Right. Okay. How popular does the Gautrain continue to be? You know, when I go up to Joburg, I'm getting a rental car. I'm going out to Stories. I'm going to the News 24 offices in Randburg. You know, but as a byproduct, you could, if you really needed to go to Pretoria, take the train. It's fantastically convenient. Although, you know, it can feel sometimes pricey, but if you compare it to a full tank of petrol, it still works out, you know, quite great in certain respects. How popular is it still? Are we talking millions of people taking this?
Yeah, so that's something indicated in the Gautrain Management Agency's annual report. It was 7.8 million passengers. They call it passenger trips.
Okay.
In the 24-25 financial year. I think that's inclusive of both rail and bus, because there's also the bus service. And that was slightly down on last year, but negligible. So that's basically the level it has hit for the last 2 years, which
it's not blowing the lights out.
It's not blowing the lights out, and it's far below what they imagined it would be doing.
Do you have a figure for what they imagine it to be?
I don't, but we can. There's a long-winded route we can explain that.
Yes, because I think the PRASA figures for the passenger rail agency within the various metro nodes, you know, is a good indicator of, you know, the amount of trips that they do. But it's not a fair comparison.
It's not a fair comparison because PRASA is obviously national. But PRASA did 77 million passengers in 24-25. So, you know, circa 10 times more. The reason why we know that the Gautrain wouldn't be particularly happy with this amount of passengers, or it's not certainly not what they envisaged when they launched the service, is that as part of the concession agreement, there was a let me make sure I get the right word.
A state subsidized amount, right? Is that what you're alluding to?
Yes. It's called a patronage guarantee.
It's a nice way of putting it.
A patronage guarantee, which essentially says to the the concessionaire, being the Bombela concession company, that if you don't hit certain revenue and passenger targets, we will make up the difference in terms of revenue. Meaning that when we make the investment to build this thing, we know that we will get a return on it, because even if the passengers don't come, the money will, because the government will make up the shortfall.
Right.
And in 2024-25, that the patronage guarantee payment was 3 billion rand.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. And I went through the exercise of, if you take 7.8 million passenger trips, and the fact that the company was paid 3 billion rand in a patronage guarantee, it means that for every passenger trip, the government was essentially subsidizing that to the value of 380 rand.
Wow.
Per trip. Bit of a crude way to do the maths, but it's indicative of the value of the subsidy and how the passenger numbers haven't quite lived up to expectations.
Yes. Okay.
And this is even more crude as a way to do it. But I looked at the cost of an Uber from Hatfield to OR Tambo, which is the furthest possible route.
That's quite a journey.
And at the time I looked, which was midday, it's probably not peak, it was less to take an Uber than the 380 rand subsidy.
Wow.
And I think it's worth remembering that all across the world, passenger rail services like this are state subsidized.
Yes.
This is not...
Yes, there's a move now in the UK, especially because it's so privatized, to move it back actually to a public-private sort of deal, that where the government has a bit more stake in it. It's funny because it's kind of like the other side of the coin to a certain respect, because the state also wants to have its bite of the pie as well, seeing that there is money to be made there. And there's a lot of complaints in the UK as well, just to quickly add to your point, of prices just being too high for what you get. It's also a very interesting conversation to have.
Subsidies help. Subsidies are supposed to bring down the price of passengers. And we want passenger rail to work because we want pressure taken off the roads. And it can be a quick, efficient system. So subsidies are not unusual. And I suppose at the listener's discretion as to whether that level of subsidy is
right. Okay. And yet the Transport Ministry, William, did you see this headline? Now wants to, or it's put out an RFI, which is a request for market information, whether or not there's an appetite or any potential role players that would be able to assist in the realizing of a Ramaphosa administration deal under Barbara Creesy's ministerial leadership, as to whether or not there could be a high-speed rail link between Durban and Johannesburg. Imagine that.
I would love that.
Yes,
and I
it's your neck of the woods.
It's my neck of the woods, and I suppose it wouldn't. They're collecting information at this point on the viability of it. So I suppose we'll have to wait and see what that assessment shows.
Yes, and then there's a tender process, and then another 10 years to construct the thing. And
so long-term thinking on that one, I suppose.
Right, and obviously, if it's taking so long for us to find a potential replacement for Bombela in the case of Gautrain, it leaves a lot to be desired.
Exactly, and then I suppose it makes you think: how many companies are there with the sort of expertise which can participate in a project like that? Especially local companies.
Yes, my thinking was that as well. Because if PRAS has had the monopoly on rail operation in this country for the longest time, how many other local companies, as you say, really have the expertise to do this sort of thing? Right?
I'm sure that sort of process is something which will reveal that. And the Gautrain, the selection of the next operator. I mean, at this stage, I don't know how many other bidders there were for the project.
We don't know.
The current operator has put in a bid to take over to carry on, but as part of a consortium, so not as itself again, as part of a wider consortium with more partners. And I don't know how many other bidders there are.
I did see some headlines. Murray and Roberts has been in trouble sort of financially in more recent years, and they've sort of sold their stake within Gautrain to the
They
tune
got
of-
out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
We should check. I think, were they liquidated?
Right. Yes, I remember seeing that headline as well.
So yeah, they sold their stake, which I believe was 50%
That's a lot.
of Bombela. So the actual assets are owned by the government, but the concessionaire is able to make a profit of it for that period. And they sold their stake a couple of years ago now. Yeah,
It's quite a public-private partnership deal. You know,
it's the biggest to my knowledge. So I think it was a initial construction cost. Treasury put it at 31.8 billion rand. Might not be initial construction. That might be total project cost as of when they looked at it, which was 2015, 2016. And then with those patronage guarantee payments over a number of years, it's a huge, huge project.
And a lot of money to be made for any successful bidder. And then did you see this headline? Gupta links Santon property above Gautrain station on auction. This is specifically the top of the Santon station for the Gautrain. Apparently it was the Guptas were involved previously, and now that real estate, obviously in the Golden Mile, part of Gauteng, would be prime real estate for anybody looking to develop it. I would think it would be something along the lines of what we've already seen in Cape Town. The station deck is looking stunning these days here in Cape Town.
So I think that story goes that a decade and a half ago or so, there was this special purpose vehicle which was Gupta linked through an owner, which was majority owned by a Gupta linked company, which was appointed to develop this prime real estate. I mean, being on top of a Gautrain station is great because you then have access to those 7.8 million people, and not all of whom would go through. But you know what I mean? You're close to a great public transport.
It's a rare opportunity.
Very rare opportunity. And that site, after having that special purpose vehicle appointed, looks the same way it did 20 years ago. Nothing happened. So now
it's going on auction.
It's going on auction. And I saw in that article it's expected to fetch 200 to 300 million rand.
Yeah, maybe even more. I mean, it is prime real estate. Can you imagine like a shops, penthouse apartments? That's the sort of thing that I'm thinking about.
Apparently it's got there's a broad range of things they can do. So from a zoning perspective, there's options. We don't know what will be there yet, but certainly an attractive offer.
Yeah, our colleague, you sit next to him, Jan Krinier, has always got. I think you two are in competition for all these beautiful business.
Well, yesterday
stories.
We certainly were. 2 Gautrain stories.
The story goes that Cedar Park Properties, which was linked to the Guptas, won a tender to develop the site but built nothing, and then it was later liquidated around 2020. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic happened. From a news reporting perspective, obscure stories like these would kind of fall by the wayside, and then it's sort of been brought up again recently. But yeah, prime real estate there, of course. Prasa, okay. Going back to rail, as we know it in South Africa today, I mean, yes, it's slowly going back to those old numbers of the number of passengers that are taking trains, Metro Rail trains. It's great to see the blue trains out and about, specifically in Cape Town. We see more stations are being opened up because they're being refurbished. But, I said it right at the beginning, rail in this country remains largely dilapidated in terms of those old corridors up and down the country. And my local train station, the Grendel, here in the northern suburbs, is still, there's bricks lying everywhere. There's 1 or 2 security guards looking after things. But it hasn't been refurbished, and I can't take a train to town as much as I'd like to. Ideas of having a high-speed rail network between Durban and Joburg, it's a lofty dream when we're not getting those other fundamentals correct.
PRASA is one of those. So I covered their annual report a month or two ago now, and it was hollowed out through the state capture period.
Yeah.
COVID-19 sort of hollowed out and then finished off by the pandemic. And for the first time in this annual report, you were seeing something of a passenger volume recovery. Is too grandiose because it might have doubled year on year, but I think that story went on to say that it was down 85% on the decade. So it was something like 600 million passenger trips happening a decade ago, and it's now down to 76, I believe it was, around 80, which shows that passenger rail was hollowed out. The other thing to note with PRASA is you can see through that state capture period that PRASA was spending a tiny fraction of its capital budget, which meant that the infrastructure was rotting. And there's also been a positive trend in that respect where capital expenditure has been increasing steadily year on year for the last couple of years. So such an important part of our transport mix is passenger rail. I mean, it takes people off the road and offers often a cheaper and reliable service to people. It's been gutted. It's been gutted in South Africa, and there are very early signs that there might be something of a recovery at PRASA based on passenger volumes, which is too early to really call a success, but is perhaps a positive indicator.
And then did you see, of course, we've been reporting on it through our investigations team, the old yellow trains that PRASA was utilized are being refurbished and sort of just being left in our dock stations just to sort of,
that's the
resume being decayed again.
That's the concerning part of the capital expenditure numbers going up is you want that capital to be spent on productive assets, not assets that we've got no intention of using.
Right. And then I saw some interesting comments just under the News 24 comment sections, just in general. We should be reselling these old yellow and grey trains that are now being refurbished instead of letting them to rot again, sending them to other African countries. Why can't Zimbabwe use them? Why can't Botswana use them?
Well, make sure that the tracks are the right size
and that they're the right height.
We don't want to screw somebody else over the way we got screwed.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. That's William Brederode. He's got the scoop on what's happening with Gautrain these days. Will they be able to get another operator in time? I don't feel an awful lot confident at this stage in terms of what you've given me the information from the Gautrain Management Agency. It's very vague.
It is quite vague, but they maintain that the process will be smooth and that there won't be any operational issues. But
I'm sure you'll stay on top of it too.
I suppose we'll have to see.
Yeah, 100%. Who will run Gautrain? Clock ticks as bid to find new operator runs late. That's William Brederode. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Graeme. Awesome.